Hi, Paul from Power Wash Store here. We're here looking at the Restoration 1 South Houston skid. We have a complete drop-in high pressure and low pressure soft washing skid. Start out right here. We have our 100-gallon water tank, our aluminum hose reel platform with our 18-inch Titan reel, has 150 feet of garden hose on here. We have a float valve on the tank, a selector valve, and this selector valve is used to feed between the tank, which is where it is right now, and we're actually going to turn it over here for our next step, which is going to be priming the proportioner, priming the proportioner and the booster pump. So that line runs over to the booster pump. Coming around the skid here, we have a 5.5 gallon a minute at 3,500 PSI water dragon poly chain pressure washer with the Udor pumps. Honda engine. We have a small platform that we use that we can put over the pressure washer here to not lose that space for storage, to allow you to put surface cleaners, generators, whatever you may want on it. On the bottom here, we have a 12-inch aluminum Titan reel with the stainless steel plumbing stacking kit, and on the top we have our low pressure reel with 250 feet of Curitech agricultural hose, again stainless steel plumbing on this unit. Over on the side here, on the pressure washer, we do have a downstream chemical injection, which has the hose right here that is removable from the system. We have an 11-gallon aluminum gasoline tank with a snap lock cap, EPA approved cap on here, DOT approved tank. 11 gallons, give you a real long run time. We have our Stay Right booster pump skid. We have our 7-gallon poly chemical tank that's used for storing your surfactant, and we have our 55-gallon tank that is used for storing pure bleach. Here we have our proportioner system that is used for blending the bleach, the water, and your surfactant at different concentrations for the cleaning process. So we're going to open up our proportioner here, and we're going to cover the valves. We have our water valve, our detergent valve, and our SH valve. We can determine the concentrations of the SH that we're going to use in our mix. What we're going to do is we would open the water valve up all the way, and each one of these numbers actually corresponds to what the percentage of bleach would be in the mix. So if I have it set at 1.5, that is actually a 1.5% mix of bleach. If I have it set at 4, that would be a 4% mix of bleach, and so on and so forth. The detergent valve is used to meter how much detergent or surfactant you're going to actually mix with your bleach and water mix. Typically that will be anywhere from 3 to 5 in the operating process. Some people that use really low-grade surfactants or really thin surfactants like a laundry detergent or something may actually be all the way up at like 8 or 9. So you're not actually getting much benefit out of that. So a stronger, heavier surfactant like Drag and Grip, you'd probably be operating at more like a 3. So you're actually using a lot less of the product. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the priming process here. What I've done is I got my water valve open all the way. We're going to take our selector valve on our booster pump, and we're going to turn it over to being force fed from the garden hose. And what you're going to see is when I squeeze the trigger, it should get a little bit of air or something pushed out of the line. You can see now that's just with the garden hose. If I turn it on, you'll actually see the pressure build up, and I'm going to force the air out of the line. You can see I got some little bit of debris on the ground over there. I can actually push it with this booster pump to push it out of the way. A little bit of soap residue from previous testing, but you can see with just water running out of the booster pump, it's a little bit windy, but we can get about anywhere from 40 to 50 lineal feet right now. Oh, there's a little bit of air coming out of the line. There we go. Now that the air's out of the line, you can see now we're doing about 55 to 60 feet lineal feet, and depending on the wind, that's going to vary. So what we've done is we've forced the air out of the system here by force feeding it from the garden hose. Now what I want to do is, because I got my water valve open all the way, I'm going to turn the valve over to the proportioner, and I'm going to squeeze the trigger, and it's going to suck the water into the line. And you can actually hear the tone of the pump change. You can hear it sound like there's air cavitating, it's starving of water. That's because we don't have a lot of water coming into it right now. We have a little bit of air in the system. So what we're going to have to do is turn this valve back again to the garden hose feed, and then we're going to force the air out of the line, which you'll see at the next process because it was a little slow on the camera there. So now that what we're going to do now is we're going to shut the water off. I'm going to do the same thing with the detergent. I'm going to turn the valve over to the proportioner. It's going to suck up in the line here, and it's already into the line. You can see the pressure drop a little bit. And now I'm going to go back to the booster, and you can see that it builds back up. We're getting the air out of the line. Now I'm going to shut the detergent off, and I'm going to prime the SH line. Now the SH line has a selector on here that allows you to choose between the water tank and the SH tank, and you can use that. So at the end of the day, if you want to use this to flush out your SH valve, or you can actually use this to rinse if you're not directly hooked up to the water pressure. Okay, so right now I'm going to draw from the water. I'm going to squeeze my trigger. I'm going to switch from being force-fed from the garden hose, and if you watch that line there, you should be able to see the water come through. Now I'm going to switch to the proportioner, and there you go. You can see how it picked that water right up. Now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go back. I'm going to switch this valve back down to the garden hose to force the air out. I'm going to switch this over here to the SH line, and then I'm going to turn this over to the proportioner again and get the air out of the system. So now I've got the air out of all the lines. I'm going to go back one more time to the garden hose to force all the air out. While I'm forcing the air out of the line, I'm going to take this and I'm going to set my mixture. So I'm going to go the water all the way up. I'm going to set my SH I'm going to go do a roof. So I'm going to set my SH at 4%, and I'm going to set my detergent at 3. So I got the air out of the line. I've been squeezing the trigger. I've been force feeding it. So now I'm ready to use the proportioner. Now, if you watch the spray, I'm going to switch right now. Watch the spray. You can see the distance I'm shooting at right now. I'm going to switch. Right now this is being force fed with the garden hose. Now I'm working from the proportioner. Okay, and you can't see the difference in distance, but you may notice a little bit difference in the spray stream, and there's a little bit of a drop in pressure, because what this does is this takes your inlet pressure and boosts it by 125 psi. So I'm going from 80 psi inlet and adding 125 to it, so I might be at 205 psi. When I'm drawing from the tanks, I'm at a 0 psi, so I'm only going to be operating at about 100 to 125 psi. So I've been up on the roof spraying. I'm using my proportioner here, and I'm spraying, and I'm done spraying the roof. I want to come down to the house. So what I want to do is I want to change my mix. In order to change my mix, I'm going to do two things. One, I'm going to bring my mix back down, let's say to a 2% that I'm going to use down onto the ground when I'm going to spray the house. But I want to know when that mix comes through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this up to where it says marker. I'm going to squeeze the trigger, and I'm going to count to 3. 1, 2, 3. And then I'm just going to turn the marker back, or the detergent back, to where I would normally operate, let's say 2 or 3. Now what will happen is when I squeeze this trigger and continue to spray, after about 15 or 20 seconds, when all the water runs through, you're going to see a big glob of soap come out at the end, and you're going to get a lot of suds. It's going to kind of look like what you see on the ground there, but really, really big. So you can see, you'll see suds like that coming out. You see a big glob of suds. Once that glob of suds comes through, I know everything after that point that's coming through my line and coming through my pump is actually going to be that new mix of 2%. So that's how you would change your mixes. And no, you don't have to turn these off between. At the end of the day, what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to not use the bleach, and I want to rinse this out, or at the end of the job, or I want to use it to rinse. So what I'll actually do is I'll turn this valve over to the water tank, and I may turn this up all the way just to get really good flow, turn my detergent off, and then I can use that for rinsing and flushing. And you can see just with that alone, you know, I can get some pretty good distance. I'm shooting about 50 feet. And again, it all depends on the wind, but you can see where the spray's hitting up by the building over there. So we can get some really good distance, and that's how we would flush it out. And then all we got to do when we're done then is just shut it off, wrap it up, and go on to the next job. So that's how the Restoration 1 South Houston skid works from the Power Wash store.